Sunday, September 18th, 2022. Good morning and welcome to Ben Shatliff on Sunday as the nation and the world prepares to say a final farewell to Queen Elizabeth II, who died 10 days ago at the age of 96. On today's edition of Ben Shatliff on Sunday, as well as still coming to terms and remembering Her late Majesty, we also look ahead to other things which are also going on in the world at this moment. As of course the war continues in Ukraine, and this week we think about all those people who were found in that mass grave with over 400 people. We think about how the Russians are being led away from Ukraine, with the fighting, with the way that the Ukrainians, with the great President Zelensky, are able to push some of the Russians out. But it doesn't mean that the war in Ukraine has in any way, shape or form come to an end, and they still need the help and support of Britain and all the countries around the world. We are a country and a world who will be in mourning for Queen Elizabeth II until the early hours of Tuesday morning, when the official Operation London Bridge will come to its end, and the time for wearing black and for curtains or blinds closed for anyone that is doing that, which I'm trying to do at the moment, will officially come to an end. The family will still have mourning for another 7 days, and we will start to adjust and live our lives with a new monarch, King Charles III, and have life without Queen Elizabeth II. Last week on the special tribute program which I did, I shared personal memories of when I was in the company of Queen Elizabeth II in Manchester in St Anne's Square in 1996, and then again when entering the GMEX Centre in Manchester in 2012. And those memories will stay with you, will stay with me, and anyone who's had the pleasure of being able to meet Her Majesty will always have those memories staying with them. I just want to share that picture again with everybody that doesn't necessarily follow me on social media. And that picture, which I actually was able to take, it's not a complete major close-up of Her Majesty and the late Prince Philip. I hope you can see that okay, because I can see light reflecting in there. But I'll just try and get that a little bit closer there. And that was back in 2012, when, as part of the celebrations for Her Majesty's 60 years on the throne. Those of you that follow me on social media and indeed on various different ways will be able to see that. I'll upload that again later on today if that was not able to be shown properly. I had intended to go down to London this weekend to pay my respects personally to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Now I was going to continue going to the Ukraine rally like I normally do on the Saturday, and then head down to London on the bus and get there for about 10:30 last night. The intention was to go in the queue and try and also attend the Mass, which I watch from London every Sunday from St Mary's Roman Catholic Church in Chelsea. But unfortunately, optics, and then of course to try and get back here in Manchester for the minute silence at 8 o'clock this evening. Unfortunately, the optics of being able to do everything I wanted to do there was not enough time to be able to do it, and instead, with the tribute I put there for Her Majesty and the various other different things and the candles, then that will have to be my own way of saying farewell. But it doesn't mean to say that I would not want to be there. And sometimes people use an expression here in the United Kingdom and but in other countries as well. We can't do it this time. Well, this is something that if you've not been able to do it this time, there will never be another time to do it. So I am sorry that I've not been able to go down there, but my heart and soul is with the royal family at this very, very current time. The scenes last night when they showed you the vigil with all of Her Majesty's 8 grandchildren stood around the coffin at Westminster Hall. I said a tribute there because this is one thing I can personally relate to. Thankfully, I still have both my parents, but understandably, I can understand exactly what King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward are all indeed going through when losing not just one but both parents within the space of 18 months of each other. But I have lost all of my grandparents. My grandma Teresa, who I was very, very close to, died 20 years ago. So I can completely understand. My nana died 9 years ago. I can understand exactly what those 8 grandchildren were going through. When you lose a grandparent, it's devastating, no matter what age you are, and it's even harder when you lose a grandparent when you're in your 20s and 30s or even 40s, because most of your life, or a huge majority of your life, has been spent with your grandparents being there. And whatever anybody's views of the royal family or various different things are, let's not forget the Queen was an ordinary human being. She had children, she had grandchildren, she had great-grandchildren, also friends as well. And they would all be grieving. And for those 8 grandchildren to grieve, but also had to do it publicly as well, it's very, very hard indeed. So I can completely understand in full solidarity there with those eight grandchildren. So today is the last official day of kind of mourning before the Queen's funeral tomorrow. And over the last week or so, whilst I've been watching what's been going on and also sharing personal stories and speaking with friends and various different people about Her Majesty, and you start to think then of the world history of the United Kingdom and also around the world. I've always had an interest in the royal family, just like I've always had an interest in history and a whole variety of various different things in that sense as well. So what I had decided to do is, as well as doing Ben Shatliff on Sunday, and I did also say a few weeks ago as well that I would be doing something in regards to updating everyone on what's been happening in Ukraine on a weekly basis. So I'm going to be looking at doing a new series where I might do some features on here on a Sunday morning, but I might do a specific separate thing, which is looking at the world history in the United Kingdom, and then maybe eventually further afield as well around Europe and indeed around the world. And I'm not just meaning looking at the world history from Her Majesty the Queen. We'll go much further back as well and look at some of these kings and queens of past. And some of it won't always necessarily be pleasant, because times, even though people might think the times are bad now in a whole variety of different things, then when you go back to medieval and prehistoric times and various different things, then certainly things were a lot more bloodthirsty in certain ways than what they are now. But understandably, like we say, the world in its current form today is certainly not in a good way, shape and form at all. As I mentioned earlier on as well, what's happening in Ukraine, there has been a lot of gains for Ukraine over recent weeks, but the Russians are still in there in Ukraine, and help and support is needed for everybody in Ukraine. For the ones who are in Ukraine that are still there, trying to live their everyday lives amongst the turmoil and the tragedy of what's going on, and also for Ukrainians here in the United Kingdom and of course around the world who've had to flee the country that they love. You hear of some of the atrocities which have been committed by the Russians. Yesterday I heard of how the Russians are even putting landmines in teddy bears. Some of the things that the Russians are doing are not just equal, but they're even worse than what the Nazis did during the Second World War. And although I am still paying tribute to Her Majesty the Queen on this week's edition of Ben Shatliff on Sunday, I have still been continuing and always will continue to go to the rallies to show support and solidarity for my friends from Ukraine and for all the other people in Ukraine. I've said it is time for the world to act, and I've said this on many, many times before. And it's fantastic that support is being shown, in particular by our very own government. Nobody can fault the support that Boris Johnson and also this trust have shown there. So I'm not going to make any criticisms at all. I will say that in terms of the actual refugee package initially wasn't going the way it should be, but hopefully things are being sorted out along there. But the support that Britain has given, the government as well as the British people, has been absolutely fantastic. And that picture there of Her Majesty the Queen is from the day that Russia invaded Ukraine, when she wore yellow and blue to show support without in any way, shape or form entering the world of politics. So we must all continue to show support and do much more. And I'll speak more about that over the coming weeks. I'm going to end Ben Shatliff on Sunday there, really, just still reflecting about Her Majesty the Queen and putting music on and various different things. Tomorrow will be a very, very difficult day for everybody across the United Kingdom and across the world, whether you are a royalist like I am or you're not. The fact is that somebody that has been there when we've been through very, very difficult times, like what we are now, what's happening in Ukraine, like what we went through with COVID, who was even there during the Second World War, actually, as a young girl, her and her sister, the late Princess Margaret, did a broadcast to show support for all the children who had to be evacuated. Our Queen was gracious and did an absolutely wonderful and thankful job. I will end today in memory of our Queen, but also thinking ahead now to the future. We're our brand new King, King Charles. Long may he reign over us, and wishing him a very blessed time as King of England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, King of the Commonwealth. From me for now, a very good morning.